Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Spectrum, Every Age, Every Need. I am Sean Francis, and I'm joined by my partner in Thrive, fellow warrior, and my cousin Maurice McDavid. Maurice, what up?
Not much. Another day. I was going to say another day, another dollar, but I'm not working, so just another day.
Whenever I hear that another day, I was thinking the other day as I pull into the driveway, I was thinking of Which Way Is Up with Richard Pryor when he's like
Mm.
got two families and he's playing both ends of the candle. And when he walks into the home to his primary family, he's like, hey, it's another day, another dollar, your man's home.
Man, yeah, yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, anyway.
Mm. Mm.
We are going to be doing something that's I don't know if it's a little different, but we're going to going forward do a little bit of a segment which we refer to as just who cares, right? And that sometimes that's something that people ask the universe. Well, who really cares? Who cares about me if you're feeling sorry about yourself? Well,
Mm.
who cares, especially when you're a caregiver? Who cares for the caregiver? Other caregivers. That's who.
Mm.
So all we're
Hopefully.
gonna do is, yeah, hopefully, right? But that's what we're here for, and these are some of the things that we're going to talk about as it relates to just conversation and maybe what we're each going through right now, what the week has given us, and
Mhm.
so on and so forth on another episode of Beyond the Spectrum. All right. I swear one of the biggest challenges is like, okay, don't have the fade just right, but then the other thing is to resist the temptation to just sit there and listen to the groove. So that,
Mhm.
uh, uh,
Mhm.
that's
I
kind of
can't
like my
resist
guy.
bobbing my head. I'm like,
That's
yeah.
what I'm saying. You know, so it's a good start. Good start. Before we
Yeah.
jump right into it, we want to thank our friends at Billy Footwear, an amazing company with an amazing cause. The founder, Billy Price, suffered a catastrophic accident that left him paralyzed. He had to learn how to do everything all over again, and he was able to do so with the exception of tying putting shoes on his feet. And a prototype was made. Billy Footwear was born, and they have in that time sold over 1 million pairs of shoes and impacted many lives. And I'm sure Billy will be joining us on the show sometime in the future. We've had him on previously. Just an amazing company, amazing mission. And if you click on the link in the show notes, you will get 10% off your final purchase. That includes any sales that they may have going on at the time. We also want to encourage you to join us for our bi weekly call, our men's group known as The Den. We meet every other Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific on Zoom. Society does not encourage men to even state that they are uncertain about things, much less any kind of fear or, uh,
Mm.
apprehension or anything like that. And what we've done is created a room where you get to do that every other week. And we have members that are as far away as Mexico City, on the East Coast, the West Coast, in between. Maurice, just state for everyone a little bit about what your experience has been like with the Den.
Yeah, it has been an amazing experience. You find commonality. And matter of fact, I need you to send me the link because I was talking to a coworker and he has a son that's dealing with disabilities. And I said, you got to join the den. So I'm a believer, I'm a recruiter. So if you're a dad listening to this and you need some encouragement in the midst of the fight, the den is the place to come.
There you go. And I should tell you, I came up with the idea after the previous firm that I was with working in financial services. We had created a men's group. And I thought, men's group? Man, that's a bunch of dudes sitting around a campfire trying to figure out who's got the biggest kill and who could push out a bear the fastest. That ain't me. I just have no interest in that.
Mhm.
And I found out over time that I was a part of a leadership group. I missed one of the Zoom calls that we had over a 2 year period, got everything I could out of it. And then I realized, well, if society doesn't encourage men to be vulnerable or just simply raise their hand or say, I don't know, generally speaking, then that probably applies 10 times more so. Did I just say probably? I'm not sure. That probably
Sounds a little weird.
applies. Yeah, it came out weird. That probably applies 10 times more so to those who are caregivers, whether you're talking about someone who's neurodivergent, you're talking about an elderly relative, whatever the case might be. It can be
Mhm.
a little bit of a lonely existence because you're so focused on the task at hand. As a matter of fact, my son is 19, was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. My identification for my wife and I as caregivers is less than 5 years old because I was just so busy doing what I do to even think that it was caregiving. I just thought I was being a parent. So
Mhm.
anyway, on to our topic. So with who cares, right? I care. What's your week been like, Maurice? Generally speaking, from a caregiving standpoint, life standpoint, any and everything.
Well, I'm going to start here because during the broadcast or during this show, I'm probably going to be dabbing my eyes a fair amount. I've had eye issues, and they are. I've taken some drops that make them water quite a bit, and so I need to do it right now. I was kind of waiting to say that so I could go ahead and do it. Um, so I'm dealing with that right now. There are just things that I think are part of aging that are like yow, but so that's kind of what jumps to the top of the sheet for me is I'm just dealing with some eye health right now, and hopefully the doctors get that all figured out.
Yeah.
I don't have any problems with vision. It's just my eyes water like crazy. So
You said something that's really interesting. You talked about aging.
Mhm.
And what's really bizarre for me, I'm not complaining. So, but what I'm going to say is I don't have a long list of things physically that are taking place that make me feel old. I'm
Mhm.
I'm 61. You got me by what? A year, a couple months,
Mhm.
something like that,
Mhm.
right?
62. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel good, but what's really coming to me in terms of how short our visit is on the planet, because it is a
Mhm.
visit, even though we call it home,
Mhm.
um, is not only people passing away, people that I know,
Mhm.
and some cases famous people. Um, uh, it's just a trip to see and come to grips with your mortality and things around you. Um, on one hand, that has nothing to do with caregiving, but then it has everything to do with it because it goes back to the other thought where you're like,
Mhm.
what happens to my child? Because I'll tell you this. So I work in financial services and I'm committed to building a bridge between financial service, education, literacy, and opportunity in the general public, but especially the caregiving and special needs community.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I will tell you, whether it's my family, as we have done, or other families that I've been able to serve, even if you've got every financial instrument in place, life insurance, will or trust, special needs trust, retirement, debt elimination, all of that, there
Mhm.
is still a wonder that cannot be satisfied by any financial product, which comes to you and says, what's life going to be like for my child or loved one when I exist only in memory?
Mhm. Mhm.
So when we talk about lifing and moving by at light speed, again, it's not connected to financial services, but I'm sorry, not connected to caregiving with special needs, but yet it is. And
Mhm.
I've been thinking about that a lot this past week. I mean, I have been for the past, couple years in terms of just, self-discovery, but really, and it's two things that really hit me with it. There's a gentleman by the name of Tom Baylor who just recently passed away. He worked with Quincy Jones, and he wrote "She's Out of My Life," Michael Jackson's song.
Mhm.
And we became friends on Facebook. And when he passed away, I looked at his profile, and I kind of took for granted that connection because he made a post that I had not seen that said, you know, I am leery of the platform these days, but I don't take connecting with people lightly. If I'm connected with you, I do so for a reason. And
Mhm.
then I thought of the exchange and the communication that we had by messenger, and I never really necessarily got to know him, but I found out that he was as nice a person as I really thought he was, and that was one thing. And then the other thing is I was in the West Valley, San Fernando Valley, with my son with Elijah yesterday, and in that area there is like actually two malls. One of the properties has been purchased by the Rams, and they have the practice facility and offices there. And then there's this massive project that is taking place where a portion of it is going to be designed for um, apartments or condos and businesses as well. And the entire area on the landscape, and anybody that's over 40 can relate to this. It's completely changed, and things that you knew were not there. So when I see
Mm-hmm.
sites and accounts on social media that are dedicated to nostalgia, I I feel like, oh man, it's cool and it brings a smile to your face, but some
Mm-hmm.
of it makes you sad too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Life keeps changing.
Yeah, yeah, you know.
Yeah.
And you keep thinking about the cycle, and then I look at Elijah, and I'll see like a memory that comes up on social media. And I was like, oh my gosh, he was that height 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
that voice in that video doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so those are the things that I've been thinking about this past week in particular, um, as we go through these changes and these seasons that uh, life puts upon us. Is there anything that it doesn't have to necessarily be a problem? Because when you say who
Mm-hmm.
cares, it's not necessarily, oh, tell me your problems and your worries. Those are great.
Mm-hmm.
But you might want to talk about a win, a breakthrough, or anything like that that's happening as well. Anything like that with regard to caregiving or your son, Isaac?
Again, it's all tied. My entire life is tied to caregiving, right? We both
Yeah.
understand this. There's
Yes.
nothing that caregiving doesn't touch, kind of as it impacts my life, and there's nothing that my life doesn't impact coming back when it comes to caregiving and my son and my family. So it's all intertwined. You were talking about aging and people passing, and so I go to a memorial service tomorrow for my wife's aunt, and I've known her now for 40 something years, and she's a cool lady,
Yeah.
just
Right.
probably worked into her 80s, just a little dynamo, it's tiny lady, like she's probably 4'8", or just a
Yeah.
tiny, but I got to see her shortly before she passed, and she recognized me. Hey, Maurice, and it was good to see her. It was good to be able to have kind of that final conversation with her, and her memorial services tomorrow. And um, you talked about our mortality, and I think about aging, but I will flip it really quick and say that there is a win for me as I think about aging. I've shared it here before, and you've talked about it, but I have been heavily involved in breath work and yoga over the last year and a half. And
Mm.
man, the last 2 weeks and I complained about it for the first 8, 9 months, a year. It's like, I don't feel like I'm getting any more flexible. It's still so hard to touch my toes. My hamstrings are so tight. Well, I can just tell you over the last couple of weeks, I've felt strangely limber and
Mm.
really good physically. And it's just been a real kind of a high, the way my
Yeah.
body feels so good. Um, Climbing the stairs feels like nothing, and there's no aches or pains, and I'm just like, I'm really grateful to be where I am age wise and feel the way I do health wise, with the exception of my eyes, because there's always got to be something, right?
Right. Right.
But so I think that's both. The other thing, and I hope I don't get off on a tangent here, but it's so funny how we try to define things as wins or losses
Hmm.
when there's always that you don't know if it's a win in the moment. It might feel like a loss, but 6 months or a year from now you might think, that was really a blessing for me, and it turns out
Hmm.
it was a win. Or you might think something's a win, and then 6 months later or a year later, that was, I thought that was a good thing, but it wasn't.
Right.
So um, really judging what something is in the moment, it is maybe unwise. It just is,
Yeah.
right? and,
Yeah.
and we're grateful for the days we're in. We are I don't know. I apologize if that's just a
No,
weird
no, no.
tangent, but
That's not a tangent. That's not a
it kind
tangent.
of surfaced. Yeah.
And I'm the wrong person to look
Talk about
for any.
tangents.
Yeah, judgment and a tangent. No, but it's
Yeah.
interesting because, and to be honest, I shared the most recent episode at the time of the recording for this, which was published yesterday. It was
Mhm.
just me, and all I did is shared my experience to this point, having been diagnosed with
Mhm.
ADHD and finding out that I too am are divergent. And you
Mhm.
spend your time advocating for this community, and you're a member of it as a result of caregiving. And all the time, I had another membership card that I didn't know about. So
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
know if my tangents are tied to my diagnosis, so I have nothing to do with it. But it's
Mhm.
part of me, and so I can't judge. But I think you said something that I think is very interesting, especially in this day and age. And the further we go into the future, the
Mhm.
less patience we have as a society. So I used to say that maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, somewhere around there, I used to say, people are in this very, I would say, a microwave society, or add water and stir, something
Mhm.
just instant. If we don't get instant gratification, and those analogies are way too slow. You're talking about something even faster. Because think about it. So this device, our phones, right? You take this thing, you make a call on, especially for someone that's not been born in a world where these things didn't exist, or hasn't lived in
Mhm.
a world where they don't exist. You push
Mhm.
buttons, a signal is sent to outer space. It goes to outer space and it comes back to the Earth in order to connect you to somebody. But especially depending on when you're born, you're like, my gosh, it takes so long for it to go through. It's like you're looking for perfection. And we were
Mhm.
talking earlier, there was someone that reached out to us that keeps track of podcasts. We're close to we're a very small um, organization here with this show. We don't have a large production staff or anything like that. So there isn't, looking at rankings and demographics and all that kind of stuff. We don't always necessarily get to do that, but somebody reached out to us and told us where our podcast was placed, and as a result of it, in terms of the audience, wanted to connect us with services that they provide in terms of partnerships and things like that. And we were kind of like, how is that like even possible? Well, what happens is when you do what you do and you just put it out there, you have
Mhm.
no idea who's going to receive it, nor do you know when they're going to receive it. Just
Mhm.
like what you were saying about your breath work and your stretching and everything. I think what some people do is they begin something, and if the results don't come right away, especially
Mhm.
the younger you are, unfortunately, and that's not
Mhm.
to, bash. I'm not being Mr. Get Off My Lawn. The younger generation just doesn't know. Get off my lawn.
Mhm.
That's not where I'm coming from.
Mhm.
But if you're a product of your environment, and if you live in a world where everything is instantaneous like it is now with all these distractions, why shouldn't you be impatient? Patience is
Mhm.
something that is more difficult to attain.
Mhm.
And so if we dare to get involved in an endeavor, a relationship, a marriage, a business, whatever, and we don't see the results that we want right away, you know many of us will quit because we have no
Mhm.
appreciation for anything having a chance to compound and actually grow and
Mhm.
get its value. And if you take that mindset, generally speaking, and then tie it to caregiving, well,
Mhm.
you'd see where the patience is just not the same. For instance,
Mhm.
um, Elijah is part of a program that this wonderful family has, which we'll be talking about. By the way, it's called Piper's Pals. They're based in Burbank, California, and the family that runs it, their daughter's name is Piper. I'm not even sure of her diagnosis, but she is wheelchair bound.
Mhm.
She's in her 20s. She wasn't supposed to live, I don't think, till past age 12. But her brothers, realizing that she couldn't participate in sports, they started a um, a, a baseball league. And so Elijah plays on that team. So there's a
Mhm.
variety of different disabilities and neurodivergence that a lot of the kids have.
Mhm.
And we're 2 years into basketball as well now. And so we have practice each week, and we're at practice. And I notice every now and then, I notice that have a variety of things that I go through. I'll see these victories in terms of like, oh, that child is doing this. And they're not children, they're young adults, but I'll see that one of them is doing something they couldn't necessarily do before. And
Mhm.
sometimes that's Elijah. And I'm just like, oh, that's so cool.
Mhm.
And basketball, unlike baseball, involves a lot more coordination and knowing where to go and which basket you're shooting at, when you're on offense, when you're on defense. And so, I'll see these victories, but I'll catch myself. I don't say I wish he did this like a normal, quote unquote, normal child, a neurotypical child. But the
Mhm.
distinct difference is there because there's other teams that practice at the same gym. So there's
Mhm.
neurotypical kids just running up and down. And
Mhm.
some of the
Mhm.
stuff I'm trying to get him to do, he'll do at times, but other days when he's not feeling it, it's just not taking place, and it might mean
Mhm.
running up the court, and it's just interesting seeing the difference there and the appreciation, for what it is that he can do.
Mhm. Mhm.
You
Mhm.
know, so um, that's just an interesting observation. We were talking earlier about the concept of masking, and I think something like that exists primarily amongst. Um, I almost feel like I'm going to sell somebody short by saying this, but probably more prevalent among, at least within the special needs or caregiving community, high functioning individuals who are trying to fit in somewhere.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
I mean, quite frankly, with my self discovery, we've been talking about this. Most of us have no idea who we are and aren't even necessarily trying to find out because we don't know that we don't know. So I think everybody does some kind of masking to an extent.
Mhm.
Um, do you think that there's any of that that is taking place in your experience personally, either as just a human being and or a caregiver?
It might make sense to explain masking because again, as we were talking about, I wasn't quite sure what you meant. I was thinking COVID masking. So,
Yeah. Anything other than almost anything other than who you are. For instance, you
Mm,
have made a comment that, like, for instance, me, as have a unique perspective as a African American from the U.S. Virgin Islands. What
mhm,
happens let me take that back a step further. An African American from the U.S. Virgin Islands, born in the 60s, growing up in the 70s and 80s.
mhm, mhm,
What I mean by that is that I grew up in an environment. I came to California at 17.
mhm,
And so by the time I came here, I had roots and I did some growing up here, but I had a foundation when I came here. And that foundation consisted of an island that's 32 square miles and predominantly black, but has white residents or citizens as well. And as a
mhm,
result, without anybody teaching me, I grew up communicating with technically what, three, if not four forms of English, which consist of a local dialect, which is a form of English,
mhm,
um, what would be considered more proper or corporate English, you
mhm,
know,
mhm,
communicating with white people,
mhm,
and then what is more in alignment with a Black American. And then
mhm.
not thinking about, well, here I'm going to quote unquote, because the term code switching didn't even exist then, right?
Right,
But
right.
And so I don't even know if that's an accurate description of masking. I think all those things are part of who I am. So I just speak as spoken to, fairly well. I don't feel like I'm being somebody else.
Mhm,
Like I can get
mhm.
into a couple of things to tell you right now that you'd probably understand, but certain members of the audience, unless they're from, the islands, they'd be like, I don't know what he just said or why he started speaking that way. Right. So I don't know if that's necessarily like masking, but in a corporate world, you talked about bending at least a little bit to fit into certain boxes or places because
Oh, bending a lot of bit, not a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
So with the
yeah.
bending, if you're bending in a direction that's something other than who you are, it might not be so far that it's fake, but it's
Right,
just, you know,
right.
so that defines masking to an extent. And for people that are neurodivergent, they may want to keep their diagnosis to themselves.
Mhm,
So they
mhm,
don't they try and limit or mask traits, whether it's
mhm,
tics, stimming, whatever the case might be.
mhm. Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah, so
yeah.
there you go, and that's why masking applies to the neurodivergent and really every human being.
Yeah, I think it really is every human being to some degree, right? And I I have shared with you many times, being born in the '60s, growing up in the '70s and '80s, like you, um, that my parents were very specifically spoke to opportunities that were going to be available for me because coming out of the '60s, now the civil rights movement had taken place, and some of the impediments for success were removed.
Mhm.
Um, um, but what was drilled into me very um, consistently was, you have to act, smarter,
You got
work
to be better.
harder, but got to be better, right? Just to be even, you got to be better, right?
Mhm.
And so that often for me, as I was very competitive and wanted financial success,
Hmm.
And I worked in Orange County here in Southern California, which is a very white area. Um,
Yeah.
I had to speak properly.
I'm not sure what happened there. You froze for a second there.
I am back now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Right where you said you had to speak proper. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so I adopted that wholeheartedly, and I can tell you on a number of occasions that the way I spoke was very proper, and I could see it in people's eyes when I went to a meeting. They were like, and I know, I'd come in the office or I'd not be at their home or whatever because I was in the mortgage industry for a number of years,
Right.
and their eyes would do this flash like when they opened the door, I was like, "You're black? I had no idea." And that could be a positive or a negative depending on who was opening the door, right?
Right.
Um, so yeah, absolutely adopted masking professionally for sure. And it wasn't that it wasn't who I am, but it was to grease the wheels of my success in that environment, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to being a caregiver, you know, I think unfortunately I try to mask my son. I try to get him to be quieter. You know, and I say this all the time. Okay, buddy. We're out in public. You got to control your autism,
Hmm.
and he can to a degree. Um, and I know that. Wow, that's kind of got my emotions kind of stirred up, and
I
as I'm
know.
thinking about it, it's like, is that wrong? Is that right? Um, because it's the way his body wants to act. It's what feels good to him, stimming and some of the noises that he makes, and yet it can be quite disruptive in a public um, situation.
Hmm.
And so I've spent a lot of years encouraging him, hey, tone it down, quiet down. We're out in public, that kind of thing.
It's like, who's that
Um,
for?
yeah, that's kind of the question that's going in my mind. A part of
Yeah.
it's for me. A part of it, I think, is for him because I don't want
Hmm.
people saying strange things to him or giving him weird looks.
Yeah.
Um, and a part of it is I don't want us to be a disruption to other people as they go about their day.
Right.
So it's man, I'm not even sure what to do with that because I feel kind of like I feel bad about it. I'll just put it that way. I feel like,
Well, it's okay. You know what you can do
yeah,
about it? You can continue to ask the question and
yeah,
keep navigating it because,
yeah.
like we were in Costco yesterday. Man, so I'm thankful for having this platform on the show
Mm,
because, yeah, now I feel a little bad.
mm,
Because you always ask questions. So we're in there, and he wants these cupcakes. Makes the list before we go. So he wants
mhm,
the birthday cupcakes, the white frosting, the sprinkles on them. We
mhm,
go to the area, and so two things. He's got this habit where he's pushing a shopping cart, and if he sees something that he wants, because right now he's big into brochures and literature and paraphernalia
mhm,
of any
mhm,
kind. So what he'll do is he'll be walking, and when he sees what he wants, he just like stops and he'll go get it,
mhm,
and he'll pile them up in the car. Like, you can't just leave the cart right there in the aisle. Like, you gotta pay attention. And
mhm,
I know that's his autism, but sometimes in moments it's not about, oh, I care what other people think, but I'm just like, how can you not focus on this? And when I say focus, especially because of my diagnosis, I
mhm,
find myself trying to judge him less, or I catch myself when I'm like, wait a minute, dude, like,
mhm.
focus is French to you, so how do you, you know, you know what I
Criticize
mean?
him for it, for the lack of it, huh?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I'm like,
yeah,
his lack of focus, you passed on to him some of, you know
yeah,
what I mean? So,
yeah.
but then sometimes he's just right too, So we go to the baker area, and he's like looking for the cupcakes, looking, and he wants to ask someone. And I usually try and sit back and let him ask. And if he can't quite get it out, because he's verbal, but he'll speak fast or not necessarily loud enough for somebody to hear, kind of run
Mhm,
the words together. So I
mhm,
asked the lady that was putting out the breads and stuff, and I said, "Are you guys out of cupcakes?" And she said, she looked around and she's like, I think we're out. And I said, oh, okay. So we go to the next area, get the produce, and then as we're walking away, he's looking back at it, and he's like, they don't check for like bakery section, check for cupcakes. And
Mm-hmm.
I heard myself when I was like, they don't have any, they're out. And I said it like that with the
Mm-hmm.
emphasis on the T, which is like code for what do you want? They just said they're out. And then I
Mm-hmm.
thought, well, and actually no,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't quite that smooth. He kept pushing the cart over to the bakery area anyway. And he
Mm-hmm.
goes over to the area in Costco, they have little forms where you can fill out what you want written on a
Oh yeah,
birthday
custom
cake
cakes. Yeah.
and you
Yep.
make
Yep.
your order, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
because it's paper and it's literature, he's looking at it and he wants to get it. I was like, no, that's not what that's for. You can't just like take that. But then he's like, because he'll cover one ear and start kind of mumbling or murmuring. So he's asking the girl that's there, asking her a question. And I get ready to correct him. I'm like, they said they don't have any more. But then I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
if they don't, they don't. Let me let him ask her. So he
Mm-hmm.
asks, and
Mm-hmm.
she's looking at him kind of, I'm sorry, I can't understand. And there's a coworker standing there, and he's looking over like, what is going on here? And Elijah, and Elijah gets
Uh-huh.
and Elijah gets it out and
Mm-hmm.
asks, and she goes, "Let me check." She goes to the back. There's none of them in sight, and she comes out with a tray of the cupcakes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so he got what he wanted because
Mm-hmm.
he wouldn't ask somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than accepting that he was able to ask for what he wanted and communicate it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm focused on some other stupid crap. I don't even know what I was focused on. It just wasn't on that,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. Um, and then that goes to I shift to making sure he doesn't have too many of them, because what he'll do is if nobody's looking,
Yes.
you stick them in all kind of places, the oven, wherever. And if nobody's looking,
Mm-hmm.
you won't know that they're missing because what he'll
Yeah.
do is he'll take the plastic that they come in after he's eaten them all, and when
Mm-hmm.
nobody's looking, he'll go out to the yard and put them in the bin.
Yeah.
But then when you start
Yeah.
hearing cartoon sound effects, boing,
Yeah.
boing, boing, because he's bouncing off the walls. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
did you eat all the cupcakes? Yes. And that's what he'll tell you. You're like, ah, damn it.
Man, that's what I love about being in this community is some of the things are identical, man.
Yeah,
Isaac, we give him set time that he can be on his phone, right? Because he can't be on there all day. It's be stimming like crazy, right?
right.
So the thing that cracks me up is about 5 minutes before his time is up, he gets
Uh-huh.
real quiet. It's like the whole time, like, hey, could you be quiet, buddy? Hey, stop. Uh, but I'm telling you, 5 minutes before his time, all of a sudden you don't hear anything, and it's like because he knows, and, and he'll go over if he gets away with it. So I'll be like 5 minutes past time, like I don't hear anything. Like, did you get off your phone? No. It's like okay, so I mean, and then same thing with cupcakes or treats like that. I,
Yeah.
I have to give a very specific. You can have one today and one tomorrow because if you don't say, all of a sudden you're finding cupcake, the wrappers on the cupcakes on
Rappers.
the counter everywhere, right? So
Yeah.
and yeah, so these kids are smart. They have challenges,
Man,
but they know what they're
exactly.
doing. Holy cow!
And that goes back to what I said about my own diagnosis and the
Mm,
discovery. Because I said before, I was like, regret is an emotion and a luxury that
mm,
human beings, generally speaking, cannot afford. Right? It
mm,
doesn't serve
mm,
any value whatsoever,
mm,
unless you got a time machine. No, right?
mhm, mhm,
And so when I think back to the kid that I was that repeated fourth grade,
mm,
that especially on a small island, when you repeat fourth grade the first day of school when you walk in, these are siblings of the people who are one grade ahead in the class that you are in, and they know you.
mm,
So when you come
mhm.
walking in, there's like, ooh, murmur, murmur. Oh man, he's the dumb dude. He's dumb.
Oh,
He's
I'm
dumb.
sorry, man. That was hard to
Yeah. And
imagine.
when they
Yeah.
say, and when they would say dumb, they'd say dumb like they say blue with regard to the color of your shirt. Oh, he's dumb. Not
Wow.
like anybody's trying to beat me, like it's just who you really are. And
Mm,
so, you know, thinking back with my, because in the episode where I talked about my diagnosis, I talked about one of the reasons why I can embrace it is because I've attained this clarity as to who I am,
mhm, mhm,
before the diagnosis.
mm,
And what I've come to understand is that why people have limitations. People, nobody lacks intelligence. I don't think anybody does. You could take the
mm,
most severely challenged person. People have different, not just different levels of intelligence, but what I like to look at is different languages of intelligence. Not unlike
mhm,
the love
mhm,
languages that a person has. Right? Not
mhm,
everybody's love
mhm.
language is the same. So just like you can have, you know, a person who grew up in a household where the love language is acts of affection, their
Mhm,
spouse's love language is acts of service.
mhm,
So to them, it's not affection. It's about going to work and providing every day. They're both saying "I love you," but one speaking English, the other speaking French. The
mhm,
same
mhm,
applies to our intelligence language. Like those things are just different. And so I wish I
mhm.
could. It's not regret. It's just I wish that kid back then knew that
Right,
your language is just a little different. It involves,
right,
it might involve strapping you down or something because you just can't sit and focus, whatever it was for
right.
him, meaning me,
Yeah.
you know? And so the same
Mm.
thing is like you're talking about, our kids being like so ridiculously smart because an inability to verbalize anything has nothing to do with intelligence.
Yeah, and that reminds me of The Den, as we pitched at the very beginning.
Hmm.
There are multiple dads there with kids who are nonverbal,
Hmm.
but they've begun to get into spelling, and that's kind of using a spell board.
Hmm.
And these dads have been blown away by what their kids understand. They,
Right.
they couldn't verbalize it, but with these letter boards and spelling boards, these kids can now express, you know, um, intellectual concepts that parents had no idea these kids understood. So
Exactly.
I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying there about maybe it's in a different form or a
Hmm.
different language, not like French English, but it's expressed in a different way. But these kids have intelligence. These kids can think and feel and understand, and
Hmm.
um, it's finding that way to connect and uh, open that up for them so that they can express to us and the world who they are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's our responsibility to find out what that intelligence language is. Because the truth of the matter is, it goes further than just the children for whom we care or to
Mm,
whom we are parents.
mhm,
Because if you're able to do that with them, you're
mm,
able to communicate with yourself in a better way and then
mhm,
communicate with others. And if you're not interested in doing that, you
mhm,
have to wonder how much time or just space you're just kind of taking up on the planet. And I hate to, it's not to judge anybody, but if you're not
mm,
trying to connect with other people in some shape or form or understand them or be curious about them, whether
mhm,
it's a different culture, different anything, you're limiting your capability
mhm,
and you're greater than you think or may ever know. And there's somebody who needs your curiosity,
mhm,
you know.
mhm,
So raising consciousness isn't about I'm going to become enlightened and I want to get smarter. That's not a
mhm,
bad thing, but it's
mhm,
broader than that. It's not just about you. And that's one thing that I think caregiving gives us and teaches us. And going back to what I was saying earlier, the patience to allow something to develop and grow
mhm,
and be
mhm,
built. You know, like for instance, just look at your marriage. So we're 21 years in. You guys got us by like say 10 years. Just think of like what it means to have that and what it's built into. And every now and then just stop and think about, man, this is something special here. That took time. No matter how perfect you might be on paper, no matter how deep in love you are, that didn't become what it is from day one.
mhm,
You know, nothing
mhm,
does. You know,
mhm,
and I could get on a soapbox and go on about this forever. But even on social media, there's guys that, and in some cases here, and then in other cases third world countries that have these artificial muscles. You ever seen them where they have like I don't know if it's liquid or something like that they put into them where there's like just the whole they want to get big and buff. So they yeah man
oh,
yeah
oh,
so they got like big fake like they have like a big bicep that's the size of a community and a forearm that looks like, a toothpick, and I just think that that's everybody's kind of thing. They're like, I'm pushing the button, but it's not working. I quit, you
Mm,
know,
mm.
and we kind of get softened by that, and there are fewer things that I could say that make me sound more like, get off my lawn. But that's not what I mean. I just think it's the truth, though. And I think it's something that caregiving kind of, it toughens you up too.
Yeah, well, we've talked on this about this in other episodes, but you're forced into this a different kind of reality, right? And the love that you have for your kids drives you um, to that curiosity because I don't know, I think it's incredible what God creates between a parent and a child.
Hmm.
This, you take a bullet for them, right? And when you know that your kid doesn't have the standard set of tools that other kids have,
Yeah.
that take a bullet for them up to another level, right?
Hmm.
And and I would even call it desperation sometimes. You just desperately want the best life that your kid can have,
Hmm.
um, and it that takes priority over a lot of other things, and it forces focus away from yourself and
Hmm.
maybe some of your selfish goals and desires and dynamics,
Yeah.
um, and pushes you into this place of caring, of caregiving.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go. Hence
yeah.
the idea for today again. Who cares? And I think it's
Mm,
something that I think it's something that people I think it's something that people say sarcastically. I think it's something that
mm,
people should really stop and ponder and
mm,
ask within your life, within your circle, and about yourself. What do you really care about?
mm,
And then when you look at other people, just like, wait a minute, who cares? Because that's something that we say without any kind of thought, but it's
mm,
very, very powerful. And
mm,
that's the same thing with words. Like, I don't know, like if you think of, um, you know, one day when, what if, those are some powerful things if you use them and utilize them correctly. And then when you go back to the caregiving component, it's like you said, everything is connected to caregiving, and caregiving is connected to everything. And
mm,
if you don't agree with that, or that hasn't been your
mm.
experience, you just haven't lived long enough and haven't been touched in an obvious way yet. But you're here long enough, you're going to be in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and I like what you said when oh, I liked what you said, and then it just shot right out of my head. Um,
What was it
Well,
about? That's the Swiss cheese you
it
talk
was
about.
about caregiving. It was definitely about caregiving, but it shot right out of my head. Well, we'll have to keep talking until see
Well,
if it
the
comes
one
back.
thing I always say, which you can tell me if I'm rambling, you can just go and cut me
Mm,
off. But that
mm,
sounded like a goat. That's not what I meant. But anyway, um, that if I remember, there's two things I usually say about caregiving, which is that if it sounds foreign to you and you're not connected to it in any way, shape, or form, if you're blessed with a remotely long life, you're going to get
mm,
membership into the community, either by
mm,
caring for somebody else, temporary membership because of an illness or injury,
mm,
or your own old age.
mhm,
And then the other
mhm,
thing is just that I said is just that everything that affects the general population affects
mhm,
us 10 times more so. And
mhm,
so what people tend to do is limit those thoughts to things that are obviously connected to caregiving, like uh, respite, therapy, medication, things like that. Those things matter, but
mhm,
being seen, being heard, being able to smile, being able to laugh, friendship, those are things that matter to everybody. I mean, if you take a list of them, and I don't know them by heart, but there's a
mhm,
list of the four basic human needs. I think there are maybe five of them. And among them is the need to love, the need to grow, uncertainty. Um, but each of those
mhm,
and the other ones that I can't remember, again,
mhm,
they relate to the human condition. But if you just add caregiving on top of that, their value and importance goes up 10 times more so. I want to go back
mhm,
to what you were saying about, you said it's almost desperation in terms of what you want for your child. I feel a little bit of
mhm,
anxiety just saying that,
mhm,
because it's not almost desperation. It really is. It's like a, the term they say, death by a thousand cuts.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily a death, but something that's overwhelming and jarring and sudden can come right at you like a rhinoceros, for lack of a better term, just like this big, huge thing. But then there's these little tiny drops that carry a whole lot of weight and just add up over time when it relates to your child and their well-being. And like for instance, like in Elijah's case, and I've never asked you this, but I thought of this. So in Elijah's case, he's got acquaintances um, on his teams that he plays with and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But he's never actually had like a play date. I don't know if he has, and he's been to birthday parties and some.
Hmm.
Some
Hmm.
of these kids within these groups that have their own circles, I don't feel like they exclude him because it's not like he's trying to get in there anyway. But he's
Hmm.
always seemed more drawn to adults. So like his
Hmm.
former teachers and aides and stuff like that, he has all their phone numbers, and he loves to reach out to them at very
Hmm.
random times and things like that.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
he hasn't had a real friend. We've been his friends. Has Isaac experienced friendship?
No, no, and that is his best friend is his sister for
Hmm.
sure, Erica,
Yeah,
one
yeah,
of my daughters.
yeah.
But that's a sibling. That's and I don't want to discount that because they have an amazing relationship, and I'm
Mhm.
really grateful for who she is and
She told me about
how
her
they.
puppy, by the way.
Oh yeah, yeah, she's got
Yeah,
a new puppy. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so how they relate to one another is it's a friendship, and she just gets on a level with him, and they do movie lines, and they almost have their own language, kind of like twins. They start
Mhm.
doing movie lines, and they're just peppering one another back and forth, and I'm like, what movie are you talking about? What is that from? But they get it, and it's beautiful to see and to watch.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, it's I have at times felt that sadness and that almost a desperate sadness. Like, it'd be cool if Isaac could have some friends,
Yeah.
um, but he doesn't really have the tools to. It would take so much time for a friend to get to know him and them to just be around one another and not even really be communicating directly because Isaac is uncomfortable with that with
Mhm.
strangers typically. So
Yeah.
it's not one of those things that's in his life.
Yeah.
And that makes me sad. But then I've been betrayed by some friends in the past. Like, maybe that's a good thing. Who knows? People can disappoint you. That's for sure.
They sure can. They can. That's true.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
yeah,
who
and
knows?
we had some guests on the last podcast that we did, Just Two Dads, where they, I'll probably have them back on here. They have an organization where they help build bridges and relationships
Mm,
amongst those that are neurodivergent.
mm,
And so they have outings and things like that. And so in some cases, real relationships develop, romantically speaking or otherwise, and they're young adults. And
mm,
it's so funny too because I always say like the biggest challenge for any parent is to strike a balance between giving your child fish and teaching them to fish.
mm,
And the same thing, you know, again, like everything else, it is
mm.
important and 10 times more important when you add the caregiving component. But then when it comes to the friendships and the relationships, you kind of want to just let them find their way, and because things mean a lot more, have more value when they do it on their own. Uh, but at the same time, you're kind of like you're kind of guarded, you know. Like I'll be honest, I think we may have talked about this before. We're working on trying to change that, and somebody's going to listen and say, "Oh, I can relate." Somebody else is going to listen and say, "How dare you?" But Elijah doesn't know how to tie his shoes. That's not his fault, you know. Um, it's easier to tie them for him or have him have shoes that don't necessarily need that. For those of you that are
Isaac
looking,
doesn't tie his shoes.
for those of you that are looking on the YouTube channel, Maurice just put his thumbs up. Yeah. Uh, but
Yeah.
I want him to be able to do that, and I think that
Mm,
once he does, he'll like because he's either very dependent with something
mm,
or he's like, get out of the way, let me do it.
mm,
It depends.
mm,
And I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunate, but just factually, the things for which he's very dependent,
mm,
we've created that, you know. Um, So, but like for instance, we discovered that he liked coffee
Mm.
when he was way too young to drink it. Like he could barely walk, and
Mm.
Laura had a cup of coffee like on a counter, and he was like barely able to walk, and he just walked up to it, grabbed it, nobody was looking. You turn around, you see him putting it back, and the cup was empty.
Mm.
So it was like, okay,
Wow.
that's our child. He loves coffee. You're not drinking that, and so he
Right.
didn't for years. Now as a young adult, he does, but he
Mm.
doesn't make his coffee in the morning, and I'm putting myself out there because part of me is kind of like, you know, especially sharing my diagnosis. I'm kind of like, I go back and forth between, I'm going to enlighten someone. I'm going to let them know that they're not alone. I'm going
Mhm.
to touch them by being vulnerable and bearing my soul. And then you're thinking, well, wait a minute, somebody might judge me and laugh or be like, wait a minute, what is wrong with that fool? You have no
Mhm.
idea.
Mhm.
But he he doesn't make his own coffee though, and we do use K cups, try to be ecologically, you know,
Mhm.
responsible, whatever. But he's capable of doing that. And so what we're doing is like taking these steps, whereas, okay, you will begin this part and eventually get to that part. You're going to come down and you're going to help, as opposed to
Mhm.
just serving him. Because I
Mhm.
hate to say it,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
we've done a fair amount of that. And to
Oh,
anybody, yeah. So
well,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, but I want to stop with what parent has it, right? Even with neurotypical kids, right?
Yeah,
There,
yeah.
there, there are there are so many battles that we have to fight as parents, right? There are just so
Hmm.
many things that like even cleaning up. Sometimes it's like I want to make my kid do it, but then I got to freaking supervise them because they do it half-ass. Excuse my language. They do it half-ass, then I have to come back and do it behind them, right?
That's a
So
physical
sometimes,
fight
yeah,
inside. Because I'll be like,
yeah,
I'm gonna put it. No, I'm not gonna
yeah,
do it. I'm not
yeah.
gonna.
So sometimes it's just easier to do it, right? And there are, and then when you step into the world of non-neurotypical kids, there are so many more battles. And I want to be mindful of parents out there who are caregivers who have kids with some form of a disability. Please do not ever feel guilty. There is a lot on our plates. We have to pick our battles. If my son doesn't tie his shoes and he's 23, right? He's learned how to slip his shoes on, and I've learned how to not be upset about the fact that the back of the shoe gets all bent up from him putting his, because I'm a
Oh yeah,
sneaker guy, and it's like
flat
you're gonna ruin
tire.
your
Yeah,
sneakers doing that, right?
right,
Um,
right.
but I've let that go. It's fine. It's his sneakers, not mine, right? And so he slips in. He doesn't tie his shoes. I, if somebody wants to throw something in the comment, good luck on you. I'm never gonna read it. And if I do, I won't care. So you ask who cares? I do not care about that
Right,
because I
right.
know the love and the effort I've put into my kids, and I'm sure so many parents who are listening to this, the love and the effort you put into your kids. There are only so many battles you can fight. You only have so much energy to get certain things done, right?
Yeah.
And so give yourself grace. If somebody's listening doesn't understand, please extend grace to those who need it,
Hmm.
because there are we could probably spend 5 shows listing all the battles that parents of non-neurotypical kids have to fight that parents of neurotypical kids don't have to fight. And so when I think about what my son can't do versus what he can do, I have seen him progress in so many ways, and I'm so grateful for that. And if he can't tie his shoes, I don't give a rip.
Yeah,
And if somebody thinks that, well, you're a bad, I don't give a rip. I'll just say
yeah.
it that way. And that's honesty. I could
You
care
know,
less what you think about my son not being able to tie his shoes.
you bring up a good point because no, we're talking about the episode being titled "Who
Well, who
Cares,"
cares? That's
right?
exactly
That's the
right.
season, and
Exactly.
that's what the series is going to be. We'll
Yeah.
come back to. We'll do other episodes on the topic,
Right.
but we know of the immeasurable value in caring,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also immeasurable value in not caring if it's the right thing that you're not caring for, because
Mm-hmm.
or caring about.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to the opinions of others, like for instance in the personal development space, there's several things I've heard, which is, if a person is not paying your rent or affecting your income or paying your mortgage, then who cares what they think about you?
Mm-hmm.
And there's another one that says your opinion of me is none of my business.
Mm-hmm.
And
Love that one.
that's when it comes right down to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. And as a caregiver, you need to really like take your ammunition, your care ammunition, and load it into the right gun
Mhm.
to have it pointed at the right target. Some of them really don't deserve your time. And
Mhm.
that's a difficult thing to adjust to, also. We could spend a whole episode on that,
Mhm.
especially for someone who's raised in a household where one of, if not both of the parents have a very what are the neighbors going to think kind of
Mhm.
mentality. Because when
Mhm.
that happens, because I know more than one person in that situation, I'm sure we all do.
Mhm.
And people who haven't gotten over that carry a whole lot. And not unlike everything else, it matters to the um, neurotypical, but then
Mhm.
in our community, it matters 10 times more so that you don't put your care in the wrong basket, so to speak.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's something
Yeah.
that everybody has to really um, stop and think about. Um, where would you say you are with regard to the the masking that that you've mentioned that you've done? Have you gotten to a point where your care gun is amply loaded and at the right targets, so therefore there's little to
Mhm.
no masking?
Yeah, and I'll give you an example. I had an organization, a recruiting organization, reach out to me, about an opportunity they wanted to talk to me about, right?
Hmm.
And I have become very comfortable in who I am and my skill set and all that stuff. So I debated, should I put on a jacket and a nice button down shirt and a tie? And I'm like, no, man.
I
You
can't.
know, uh, and maybe it's just a gift of getting older. Maybe that's just
It
bottom
is.
line, right? You can't do that in your 30s, but yeah, by the time you hit your early 60s, you're like, yeah, I can do that. So it's like it's about me. It's not about what I'm wearing. It's not about that, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I would say I'm I think we're ever in that process because, like you
Hmm.
say, if you stay curious about yourself and you're asking questions about why you do the things you do, I think it
Hmm.
continues to uncover weaknesses and false beliefs that we have.
Yep.
So I would say I've progressed in that world of removing masking from my life, but it's still there in
Yeah.
various forms. Um, but like when I think about career wise, because I think that's what I focused on in the conversation today, me, speaking the way I speak. And now I do still do code switching occasionally. My wife will go, "Where'd that come from?" Because talking to somebody black, right? She's like, "Where'd that come from?" Like, I don't even
Yeah.
know. It just happened, right? Uh,
Yeah. I don't even. Sometimes I don't.
yeah,
I always think that code switching is a conscious thing, right?
yeah. I don't think.
Um, if
Well,
it's
maybe
if
it
it
is,
if
but
it's not conscious, I almost feel like it's not code switching because you're not like, let me
yeah,
speak how they will relate. It's just like
yeah, yeah,
instant, like the
yeah.
key and peel. The key is it key and peel or peel and key?
Key and
Um,
Peele, yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
Key and Peele skit about Obama, which was real, which is he's meeting all these dignitaries and very formal with the white ones and pleasure to meet you, pleasure to meet you,
Uh-huh.
like
Yeah,
afternoon, my octoroon. I was like, what the
yeah, yeah,
but there's
yeah,
truth to that. And I think
yeah.
that I think what that is just if you have a certain amount of fluidity, you
Hmm.
speak kind of as spoken to, and that's a matter of connection. That's how I look at it.
Hmm.
Uh, if you're speaking in a manner that just, you know, like for instance, my stepdad and his sister, my aunt, they talked about some guy that they grew up with. I'm not gonna say his first name, but they grew up with this guy where they're from in the Midwest, and he's known as his last name is Savage. He went to school, and I guess he was in college doing something with liberal arts,
Hmm.
and they ran into somebody that knew him, and they say, "Oh, do you know so and so Savage?" And they were like, "You mean
Savage.
Savage? That's a different story." You know what I mean?
Savage. Yeah, there
I'm
you
like,
go.
man,
Yeah.
I knew
Well,
that A-word since, but
I'm going to give you an example of masking right now. So
yeah,
I was, so this, I associate physical ailments with weakness, right?
yeah,
And now that and aging, right?
yeah,
And so there, I have consciously said I'm not going to care about that today. I'm not going to turn off my camera and then wipe my eyes. And it's like So I'm learning. Now if this was 2 years ago, I probably would have flipped the camera off real quick, dab my eyes, flip the camera back
Yeah,
on. Nobody would
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but it's a process, right? It's a
it
process
is.
of learning how to walk in the freedom of
That's
who you are,
exactly
where you are, and
it.
people can accept it or not. Like you said, whether they accept it or not, that's their business, not mine. So
Yeah, there you
yeah.
go. And that's something that you hope any and everybody can get to.
Mm,
Certainty about who you are. Like what I say is most of us go through life with our mirrors very, very foggy.
mm,
Never stop trying to clean your mirror.
mm,
Never
mm,
stop trying to raise your consciousness. Never stop trying to find out who you are. Because whoever you think you are, you know,
mm,
you have
mm,
an idea, but there's a gap between what you think you see and what's really there. So,
mm,
but our time has run out as it always
mm,
does when we're having a great time. Thank you so much, Maurice.
mm.
I just feel blessed to have this platform to be able to do this, and I feel like we're just
Yeah.
getting started. You know, we have some great guests lined up. Again, I want to thank our partners at Billy Footwear. You can click on the link in the show notes to get 10% off your final purchase. And you will also see the link for our men's group, The Den. I feel like I'm limiting it by calling it a men's group. It's so much more than that.
Mhm.
Uh, but please feel free to join us and try and be a little more curious, ask more questions, make less statements. Everybody within the sound of my voice, thank you for supporting us. And let's try and love each other.
Yeah.
Thank you for another episode of Beyond the Spectrum.